Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kellyanne Boyce, and I proudly serve as president of the Chautauqua Women's Club. Welcome to our Contemporary Issues Forum, or CIF for short. We gather here every Saturday at 3 p.m. through August 22nd. There was a little snafu in the blue insert this week or over the weekend, so just know we are here every Saturday, whether you see it in the paper or not, till August 22nd. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're one of the many returning friends, thank you for spending this part of your afternoon with us. I'm really happy you are here. A quick note, tomorrow at 3 p.m., after the dog race at the Athenaeum, award-winning Mississippi Delta blues artist Eden Brent will be performing at the Women's Club. And this is produced and underwritten by Big Bad Daddy Diamond and Captain Twig. Bring a lawn chair or come down for some good old blues music before the opera gala. Now I would like to thank those who made this program possible. Jake, our videographer, Deb Treffs for another great article in today's Chautauquan Daily, Jean, our usher, Hope and Ruth Ann and the others at the welcome table, thank you. We are deeply grateful to our generous 2026 program sponsors, our anonymous donor, Chrissy Fulton and George Fector, Laura Richfine of Beatrice Advisors, Susan O'Connor Baird, McGee Women's Research Institute, and Kathy Bonner, Mary Lou Goodman, and Josette Raleigh in loving memory of Rita Arjun Auerbach. Thank you for believing in our mission to promote lifelong learning. And lastly, a special thank you to Ernie Mahaffey. Where is Ernie? Is Ernie here? There you are, Ernie. He connected me with Eunice, our speaker, and she is in Chautauqua today with her lovely husband, Ryan, and other family members, so welcome. For 137 years, the Chautauqua Women's Club has brought together curiosity, lifelong learning, and community. We exist to inspire and empower women, and yes, the women who love them. Today, we are proud to have more than 100 men members, and they deserve our thanks, and we are grateful to every one of them, so thank you. This year, we are celebrating an extraordinary milestone with our most recent $40,000 scholarship gift to the Chautauqua Institution. The Women's Club has now contributed more than $2 million over 42 consecutive years. And we are incredibly proud of this. To learn more about our membership and our year-round Chautauqua Academy programs, please go to our website, chautauquawomensclub.org, or see the welcome table over on the side after the lecture. One of the things I truly treasure most about the Women's Club is that we just don't talk about bringing generations together, we actually live it. Our membership ranges from 18 months to 99 years, and I'm sure that somewhere there's somebody over 100. Some of my closest friends, greatest mentors, are decades older than I am. They've shaped my life, my leadership, and my perspective in ways that I could never have imagined. That is why today's topic feels so personal, and I bet is also true for all of you, especially in Chautauqua. We're living in the most age-diverse moment in human history, yet somehow we're more separated by age than ever before. Today's speaker has dedicated her career to changing that. Eunice Lin Nichols is co-CEO of CoGenerate, the nation's leading nonprofit helping generations reconnect to strengthen communities and solve problems no generation can solve alone. Eunice was raised in a multi-generational home, and she experienced firsthand the gifts that flow between generations. Later, while leading Experience Corp, she witnessed a simple truth that has guided her ever since. The youngers needed them to feel stable, and the olders needed them to stay alive. I love that. Today, she'll invite us to imagine what she calls the future of together, a future where every generation contributes, every generation belongs, and every generation benefits. So before we begin, let me invite you back next Saturday for another terrific talk. Many of you spend part of your year in Sarasota, and next speaker's name may already be familiar. Pedro Reis, co-founder of the Circus Arts Conservatory, the renowned performing arts and educational nonprofit dedicated to preserving and advancing Sarasota's rich circus heritage, will be here. As its president, CEO, and artistic director for more than 2 decades, Pedro helped transform the organization into one of the country's premier circus arts institution. So please come back next Saturday for our great talk. Today's lecture will last approximately 35 to 40 minutes, followed by about 15 minutes or so of questions. There are microphones located on each of my side. Please keep your questions concise and no Chautauqua prelude. If you prefer not to be videotaped, please refrain from asking a question. And when you do, please talk right up to the microphone so everyone can hear, especially the people out in the Grove. So now, please join me in giving a warm Chautauqua welcome to Eunice Lin Nichols.
Thank you for having me. All right, let's see if I get myself settled here. I was not expecting this wind. Thank you, Kelly and the Women's Club for inviting me, Ernie and Beth from Community Compact and her staff, volunteers, and the scholars for their vision and unparalleled commitment to Chautauqua's intergenerational future. I also want to say a special thank you to my husband, Ryan, who is a first-timer, and to my Aunt Donna and my mother-in-law, Nancy, who agreed to join me this week and jump into this crazy experience called Chautauqua. So I'd like to start with a quick show of hands. How many of you have a close friend who's not related to you, who's of a different generation? Wow, I should not be surprised that Chautauqua does well on this. Some of the deepest relationships that I've had in my life have been with people 40, 50, even 60 years older than me. People who are not related to me, but they changed my life. It's why I decided to dedicate my career to the pursuit of intergenerational connection. My friends and my family who know me kind of talk about it like it's my thing. Well, today I'm here to tell you why it needs to be your thing, too. But that story starts a little further back. So, as Kelly mentioned, I'm the child of immigrants from Taiwan, and like so many other immigrants, I grew up in an intergenerational home with my grandparents. They were my after-school program and my portal to Chinese culture, language, and values. I was the bridge to all things American. I remember that there would be Christmases where I would make little handwritten coupons to teach them English. The lore says I did not do a very good job of that, but I did my best. Throughout my childhood, this mix of aunties and uncles and elders from the Chinese immigrant church that I attended became like extended family to me. And as a little girl, I just thought that was the norm. That's all I knew. Ironically, when I became a young adult, I proceeded in those early years to get as far from that as I could. I wanted independence. I wanted adventure, to prove I could make it on my own. So I went to college from home, pretty far from home, and when I graduated, I joined a consulting firm with right out of college analysts, and it felt really glamorous. It was a million miles from my upbringing in my Chinese immigrant home from St. Louis. But at the same time, I'd never felt more isolated from community. I had good friends. They were all my age, frenetically finding their way in a young person's world, and everybody was transitional. They were moving from job to job, city to city, relationship to relationship, and that sense of disconnection eventually led me to respond to a job posting less than 2 blocks from my home. They were looking for someone to run the local chapter of a program called Experience Corps that brings teams of older adults into urban public schools to help kids read by 3rd grade. The day I got the job and met my scrappy crew of older volunteers, I felt like I had come home. But with one crucial difference. This home happened to be filled with 200 older adults. There was Diamond Dave, who was a beat poet and mentor to Bob Dylan, who spoke almost exclusively in rhyme and regularly reminded me that if I had a library card, I would never be poor in mind. And then there's Virginia, a steely-eyed survivor of the Bataan Death March in the Philippines, who became like a surrogate grandmother to me. And then Joe, a Korean War veteran who insisted I should not cancel our volunteer training the day after the planes hit the Twin Towers. I can still hear his voice over the phone when he called me and said, "This is exactly the time for us to get together. We need each other." At the time, I thought Joe was talking about that day. And now I think he was describing something much larger. We need each other. Indeed, Dave, Virginia, Joe, and my young staff worked tirelessly to create a safety net for those young kids in San Francisco. And unexpectedly, we also were creating a safety net for each other. Virginia threw me my first baby shower. Dave and I collaborated to host a spoken word poetry jam between his old beatnik friends and the student DJ club members. Joe became a volunteer team leader, an indispensable member of my team. And when he passed away, I spoke at his funeral. Connecting across generations and a multitude of other divides, we became a new kind of extended family, a family of our own making. But when I looked around, so few of my peers were tapping into that magic. They were stuck in the same cycle of generational disconnection I had been in before landing at Experience Corps, and I wanted to understand why. Well, it turns out America is in an extraordinary moment of demographic shift. 100 years ago, the population by age was a steady downhill slope with more than half the population under 18. Today, that slope has become a straight line, with the same number of people at every age from birth to 74. My husband read that in the Chautauqua Daily and was like, "I think that's a typo." And I said, "No, that's the demographic reality we're in." So if you give that a moment to sink in, we have the same number of people at every age from birth to 74. We've never had a society that was structured that way. At the same time, we are the most age-segregated society we've ever been. The institutions, the infrastructures, the policies that shape how we live our lives are literally designed to separate us, often for the sake of efficiency. Children spend most of their time with other children in schools, college students are with other college students on campus, middle-aged people are in the workplace, and older adults routinely end up in elder-only settings like senior centers, retirement communities, and nursing homes. In the process, the generations often cease to meet at all, especially outside of the family. Carl Pilmer, a sociologist at Cornell University, calls the systematic segregation of old from young a dangerous experiment. Others have gone as far as to call it age apartheid. And what has this experiment gotten us? Well, it's exacerbated a raft of problems, including rampant ageism and generational conflict. It's turned age groups into interest groups, pitting us against each other via fixed pie policies and a zero-sum narrative about kids versus canes. You may have seen headlines about the silver tsunami. The most recent barn-burning headline is the oligarchy, how older Americans are hoarding America's potential. And we're just getting started. By 2034, we will be more old than young as a country for the first time. By 2050, nearly 1 in 4 Americans will be over 65. The 85-plus population will triple. And some social scientists are saying that fully half of the children born in the developed world today will live to be 100. What's more, our country's age segregation goes beyond the structural. Even our increasing racial diversity is age segregated. The kids in our country are already majority minority. People over 65 are 70% white. Some call it the gray-brown divide. It's the perfect setup for a zero-sum generational showdown. Our older, more racially homogenous population controls the vast majority of America's resources, continues to hold most of the seats in political power, and vote at significantly higher rates than young people. And in case you haven't heard, the baby boomers are the first generation ever to report they don't think they're leaving the world a better place for their kids. So this is a tale of two futures. Will we double down on age-segregated institutions and zero-sum generational narratives and behaviors, or will we build the social infrastructure for a genuinely multi-generational society? How we respond to this demographic reality will shape the character of American life for generations to come. So, how do we ensure we're on a path to rebuild an age-integrated society in the midst of all those stats I just threw at you? Well, the good news is the data also shows us that we're at a tipping point. Researchers at Stanford, Harvard, and the University of Chicago are documenting the mental, civic, and economic benefits of cross-age relationships. A growing number of universities, faith institutions, and civic organizations are actively experimenting with multi-generational design. And multi-generational households have seen a fourfold increase, with 60 million Americans now living 3 or 4 generations under one roof. And for the first time, national data confirms that Americans across generations don't just tolerate the idea of working together for the greater good, they hunger for it. Research commissioned by my organization CoGenerate with NORC at the University of Chicago found that 96% of Americans believe our country could solve problems better when younger and older people work together. I can't think of another thing America agrees on more than that. What's more, people of all ages told us that they want more opportunities to work across generations for change. Surprisingly, Gen Z most of all. So, if that's true, what's preventing us from doing what we actually want, and frankly, what we know our society needs? Every age group cited an inability to find opportunities to work with other generations, along with difficulty communicating with people much older or younger than themselves. That anxiety about communicating across generational divides was 2 times higher for Gen Z. It's why we need to urgently create social infrastructure that helps olders and youngers forge bonds, bridge divides, and co-create a better future in ways that become second nature, even inevitable. And we need to give people of all ages opportunities to practice doing it. So, what does all of this have to do with Chautauqua? Well, I'm interested in Chautauqua because it's a reminder that another way of living is possible. In my wildest dreams, Chautauqua would become the go-to place in America to practice intergenerational partnership, or what we at CoGenerate call cogeneration, the power generated when olders and youngers come together to solve problems no generation can solve alone. Chautauqua has the potential to point America towards the thriving age-integrated future that this multi-generational moment demands. When I walk across these grounds, I see children heading to camp, young artists carrying instruments to practice, college students working summer jobs, retirees filling lecture halls like this one, and families eating ice cream together on Bester Plaza. The generations are here. You're not starting from ground zero. But here's the message I have for you. Proximity matters, but it's not enough. To rebuild an age-integrated society, we also need shared purpose across generations and ultimately partnership across generations. Over the past few years, CoGenerate has conducted deep dive interviews with 130 leaders, ages 12 to 85. Yes, I said leaders. There are 12-year-olds that are leading in incredible ways. We wanted to find out what they want and, most importantly, don't want from their older or younger allies. It turns out they shared some things in common, including the fact that nobody wants to be dismissed because of their age. For young people, it means understanding that they want a seat and a voice at the table, and they want it now. For older adults, it means understanding that not everyone is ready to pass the baton. Once again, the solution is hidden in plain sight. We need new models for intergenerational collaboration that tap the assets of each generation. Jordan Bowman, who's the young executive director of Journeyman Triangle, a nonprofit that's focused on rites of passage for boys, said it this way. The phrase that always got thrown at me was, "You are the future. You're going to solve all the problems in the world." And it really rubbed me the wrong way. Don't put all of that on my shoulders. It's an unfair burden to say one generation is responsible for solving problems that existed before we were even born. I've learned to say thank you. Let's build this thing together. So how do we get from proximity to purpose to partnership? Well, a few years back, Maya, a student at Bowdoin College, formed a friendship with Beth, an 86-year-old Brunswick resident who became one of the most important friends that Maya ever made in college. Here's how Maya describes that journey in her own words. Beth and I connected through a program at a community rec center for older adults in Brunswick. The program, Calls to Homebound Elders, really should have been titled Calls to Homesick, Lovesick, Sick of School, Sick of, you get the point, college students. Maya says that while her friendships and interests at school fluctuated, Beth's willingness to listen stayed consistent. Maya didn't want to keep this relationship to herself, so she launched a classic advice column in the school paper with a twist. Students anonymously sent in questions about anything: school, jobs, relationships, problems with their parents. And then every 2 weeks, Maya would send submissions to Beth and her other homebound friends, and they would write back with collective advice. Describing her friendship with Beth, Maya said, "I've come to realize that although Beth is many years older than me, she is teaching me how to be young." At CoGenerate, we often talk about the wisdom of the young and the energy of the old. One lesson to take from Maya and Beth is that shared purpose and ultimately partnership comes out of the kind of curiosity, listening, and sharing that seeks both what you have in common and what you have that complements one another. What do I mean by that? Well, lucky for us, we have a case study that just happened right here at Chautauqua. Last week, a group of 7 community college students who are alumni of the Community Compact Summer Scholars Program at Chautauqua came back as CoGen scholars. They were part of a pilot project designed to bring a small, diverse group of young people to immerse in all things Chautauqua, attend the lectures, go to the performances, engage in the porch dialogues, with an eye towards creating openings for intentional intergenerational connection and collaboration. Some of these young people stayed in denominational homes to participate in communal living. 2 took poetry classes where they were the youngest by decades, but learning alongside fellow classmates who had been writing poetry for decades. That's what we call proximity. And throughout the week, they met with their CoGen allies, a group of older Chautauquans who were equally interested in sparking intentional intergenerational connection. We call that shared purpose. They spent time getting to know the scholars, discovering common areas of interest, and then they formed age-diverse teams to work together to orchestrate pop-up experiments in intergenerational connection, which ended up taking place 2 days ago, on Thursday. Well, as you can imagine, nothing went as planned. The CoGen scholars and older allies all liked the idea of using art and music as the medium for connecting across generations. But landing on an actionable project that could be developed in 1 week and could engage the broader Chautauqua community was like a halting dance. Younger scholars had ambitious ideas. Older allies tried to ground the projects in something that felt like could actually work. Logistically, the scholars were often free late in the morning or early afternoon when older allies were in classes and had other commitments. Everybody had to run off to a different activity on campus in the evenings. Some of the olders, I discovered, felt anxious about the lack of team notes and a written plan keeping everyone on the same page, but they didn't want to overstep when the younger seemed fine with everyone being in charge of their own to-dos. And biggest of all, there was the constant reflexive pull for olders to return to their default role as mentors and advisors rather than co-conspirators. By the middle of the week, the CoGen scholars were feeling overwhelmed. They were worried that they would need to do the heavy lifting on these pop-up experiments in an environment that was frankly still feeling very new to them. The CoGen allies were also feeling very anxious about their bandwidth to engage in the midst of their very full lives here, and they were stressed that they were somehow letting down their younger counterparts. And then, to add insult to injury, the smoke from the fires up north rolled in so thick on Wednesday that it became clear we were going to have to move the location of these pop-up experiments from the big, welcoming, centrally located Bester Plaza to a building I had never heard of and had not stepped foot in before called the Hall of Christ. This was not going to go well. But here's the thing. Remember Experience Corps, the intergenerational literacy program that I told you about earlier here? Well, I used to think the main thing my intergenerational program and team was doing was running an awesome literacy program that helped kids read by 3rd grade. And as we did that, the reading program created the perfect scaffolding for us to hang other things like belonging and a sense of extended family for the kids, for my older volunteers, for me. Years later, I think I got it completely wrong. What we were actually doing was creating belonging across generations. That was the main event. And that belonging, that feeling of extended family, created the perfect scaffolding to hang things like teaching kids how to read. So, I'm sure you're all on the edge of your seats. What happened on Thursday? Well, it turns out that the Hall of Christ forced us to narrow our guest list in beautiful ways. Instead of waving down random people walking by Buster Plaza, the CoGen scholars invited their student counterparts in the Summer Scholars Program, and older adults and staff who were connected in some way to this group. CoGen allies invited friends and family. We were a community wanting to happen. On one end of the room, a CoGen scholar with a passion for film and a CoGen ally with experience in improv invited older and younger participants to pair up and role play what it's like to be the other person's age. An exchange in latent stereotypes and empathy. At the other end of the room, there was a scrapbook making station, which invited folks to fill out a page with their favorite hobbies, music, recipes, Chautauqua memories, and then you'd put your year of birth at the end so we could see the collective story of us across the generations. And people were sitting there creating beautiful works of art. Later, an intergenerational drum circle formed with youngers and olders trying out new instruments and creating music together. And outside, older and younger pairs were clustered along the steps, painting rocks with creative designs and images as they traded answers to a set of relational get-to-know-you questions. As they wrapped up their conversations, they gifted each other with the rock that they had been painting. One intergenerational pair that I spoke to said they were stunned by how much they had in common with each other. Another said the conversation made them feel like family. I saw phone numbers exchanged, and I saw so many hugs. In the debrief we had afterwards, at the conclusion of this pilot, the CoGen scholars said that event was the moment they felt like they belonged, like Chautauqua had become their community too. A few years ago, Over Zero and American Immigration Council published the Belonging Barometer, a barometer to measure the state of belonging in America. Let me give you one guess on the grade we got. We did not do well. But one of the most fascinating findings in the report was that Americans with more diverse friendships report higher levels of friendship belonging. It's like if your mom says she loves you, of course she does, she's your mom. But when someone who is not like you at all accepts you for who you are, the only reason must be because you're awesome. And then your sense of belonging grows. That's why I think age gap friendships are humanity's secret weapon. They're an example of what John A. Powell at the Othering and Belonging Institute in Berkeley calls the short bridge to connecting across difference. Because it's not actually a set difference. We have all been young, or too long, we are all getting old. We're just at different points on the same journey. It's why the most repeated insight from the young scholars this week was their surprise that they had so much in common with the older generations, much more so than they had realized. So, what are the places where cogeneration is wanting to happen, much like that little community that was gathering outside the Hall of Christ? Multiple sectors of society are at a tipping point. Take higher education, where the enrollment cliff is causing many institutions to essentially run out of 18-year-olds. Last year, dozens of colleges went out of business or merged. It's why schools like Goucher College in Baltimore are making a commitment to build cogeneration into their core business strategy. Over the next decade, their campus will become 1/3 traditional age students, 1/3 mid-career learners who need to upskill in order to stay relevant in a longer job cycle, and 1/3 will be retirees living in senior housing built right on campus, turning Goucher into a living center for intergenerational learning, living, and collaboration. We could, in essence, have cogenerational Chautauqua-like campuses popping up all over the country. Or take faith institutions. 100,000 churches with aging congregations are projected to close in the next 10 years. Meanwhile, we have a rising younger generation that is spiritually curious, but they will not go into your church service. Faith institutions that bring generations together have an opportunity to spark religious innovation as a source of community and spiritual renewal. Imagine aging congregations teaming up with their younger neighbors to reimagine how church property might become common ground for affordable housing, childcare, healthcare services, and intergenerational civic action. And of course, there's the arts, which are rooted in long-standing traditions of intergenerational co-creation and can be unleashed to show the way. Liv Schaefer, the director of Dance Generators, an intergenerational dance program based out of University of San Francisco, brings students and older community members together to co-create dance performances. The program gives student dancers the opportunity to develop what Liv calls a technique of generosity in their work. They're not just focused on how high they can kick their leg, how many turns they can do, but rather the quality of their connection to their fellow dancers and the audience. How do you make beautiful movement with someone who has limited flexibility or who is sitting in a chair? According to Liv, these constraints are the things that spark the greatest creativity. Her students, young and old, are learning to ascribe virtue to movement and creativity at every stage of life. Most dance programs for young people are not teaching that. So I want to leave you with one final story in honor of my niece's roommate, Lindsay, who's in the piano performance program here at Chautauqua. This one involves a piano. So I turned 50 last year, and part of that aging process, given the number of elders I've had the privilege of living my life with, has been grappling with what really matters in life. So bear with me as I try to explain. I have a 78-year-old friend, Belle, who runs an intergenerational old-time bluegrass music camp in a remote fishing village with no road access on a population of around 2,400 residents in Cordova, Alaska. It's where I first learned to fiddle 11 years ago, and where my son and I have returned to join the team of volunteers and instructors who range in age from 16 to 85. If I hadn't been invited to speak here at Chautauqua today, I'd be there at Belle's camp this week, helping out. But it's okay, this was worth it. So when I was with Belle last summer, she told me a story I haven't been able to shake. Belle's best friend, Frances, owned a piano and used to host special jam sessions at her house for a group of musicians, older and younger, but including Belle's son, Mike. Over time, that piano became a symbol of the extended family that had formed over music and the constant creative exchange between generations. When Frances died and the house was put on the market, Mike said it was clear that there were only two options: move the piano or buy the house. Mike bought the house. To this day, young and old continue to meet around the piano for conversation and music and to keep Frances's quirky old-time tunes in rotation because she would have wanted it that way. So who are the people in our lives who will say, move the piano or buy the house when we're gone? It's not actually about the piano or the house. It's not even really about legacy. It's about creating such a profound sense of belonging across generations that we literally can't imagine living life any other way. I dream of Chautauqua being that place of belonging across generations, a place where young and old get to co-create our collective future together. We have all the puzzle pieces. We just need to have the will to put them together. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow, I've got the goosebumps. We'll start our Q&A now, but it's very rare that you get a standing ovation, so congratulations.
Thank you. I brought my supporters. That's the hint. Bring your supporters. I did not ask for that, though. Thank you. So as I transition to Q&A, I want to start by doing something a little co-generational. I love telling stories of the insights I've gathered from my travels and my work across the country, but I hate to tell those stories when the people who actually lived them or ran the programs are here in the room, even more so when those people are beloved members of your community. So I'm going to first, I've invited Nellie and Beth, who are part of our pop-up experiments and the CoGen Scholars experience, as well as the Summer Scholars experience, to say a couple things, because I think they're the voices that should actually matter to you. They're the ones who are here long after I am gone. I want to start with Nellie. All right, Nellie, you were a Community Compact, right now you're a Community Compact staff member. Last year you were here as a summer scholar in community college, here for a week-long experience. So then she came back this year to help with the running of the program. The one thing I wanted to ask Nellie, as you introduce yourself, is you told me a story yesterday about an older mentor that was important to you, and then inexplicably your relationship transformed where you actually became, in some ways, co-equals in the thing you were doing. And I think that's one of the hardest moves, is to move from being a mentor to actually seeing a young person as somebody who could be your partner. So I'd love you to tell that story.
Yeah, can you guys hear me? Okay, good. So it was my former youth pastor. She was my youth pastor when I was young, of course, about 15 years ago. We disconnected after she taught me, and I was part of her youth program. But last year, the end of last year, we reconnected through a mutual friend, which was really nice. Since then, we've sort of just been hanging out and, getting to know one another once again, along with my siblings. She is around 60 years old, and she is a white American. That's important for the story. But she was very kind, very welcoming. It's like time didn't pass, honestly. I'll say that. She's now a lead pastor at her church, Reformed Christian Church. And she has invited me to her office, and I've gone to her church. I've seen her preach, and it's just been nice. Until one day, she surprised me, and you guys are also going to be surprised, because we're talking, we're chit-chatting, we're just like getting, going deep into conversation. Until she asks me, "Hey, do you want to preach on Sunday?" I was like, "Excuse me?" Yeah, I was as surprised as you guys are. I said yes. Just to cut it short, I said yes. I didn't know why until I asked her. And I was like, "Hey, why would you?" I'm like, "I am Gen Z. You've been doing this for years. Like, where's the connect?" And she looked at me and she said, "I see something in you. And I think you have a story to tell. And you have things to say. And I want to give you the mic." Unbelievable, I know. I did it. Yes, I did. I wrote a whole sermon. It was amazing. I preached. The bishop came, surprisingly. He comes like maybe once every 3 months. But he was there that day, and I was like, oh my goodness. And that specific day, fortunately, it was the most people that she had at her church. She ran out of communion cups. That was like a big deal. But ever since then, it's just become this magical relationship where she's letting me lead in a way, and I think it's changed my life, for lack of better words. I think her trusting me and believing in me, but actually following through was probably the most impactful part for me. So, yeah.
Thank you, Nellie, for sharing that. Thank you. Beth is somebody, if you don't know her, you need to know Beth. She is executive director of a community compact that runs the program that brings these scholars onto campus. Beth, my question for you is, Community Compact is already a beautiful intergenerational program with older adults who are mentors to the summer scholars that come. But when I met Beth last year, she got really excited about this other layer called CoGeneration. So I wanted to ask you, what did you see as the possible impact of adding this additional layer to the thing you were already doing? And would love you to share that.
Thanks, Eunice. What's really wonderful is we've started this process intergenerationally, you and me and Ernie. Mm-hmm. And so working with those two generations was amazing. And then we brought in Nellie and Julie, former summer scholars. So to plan with them in a way that was sort of a level playing field instead of, one or more of us being in charge, and it just brought a freshness. It became more fun. It became more fluid. It just sort of we kind of opened each other's eyes in the process. And it also made me really rethink our Summer Scholars process and really bring Nellie closer to get her opinion, because she's a near peer. Since she's a little older than the scholars, she took a break in college and went back. And it just makes more room for everyone to belong. And then to witness this week where our CoGen scholars were collaborating, the day we had at the Hall of Christ, there was such grace and peace because, kind of everything was covered by so many different, so many different generations. So we had the wisdom of the elders and sort of like the fresh ideas of the young people. And so I was just really struck. I feel like we kind of living in this anxious age, and it seems that when we include others from different generations, that anxiety really subsides. That's my lived experience, and it's thrilling to give the opportunity or to invite people like Nellie. Last night she was, we were giving out, they have those little stones in the bookstore that have words on them. So she picked out one for each of our summer scholars. And she shared it with them, and she just affirmed them that everyone was in tears. And that's something that I usually do, but I was just in awe at how she stepped into that role and brought it to life. So I feel like there are so many more possibilities, right? And so, and it's just more fun.
You stole my line. It is just more fun.
Yeah.
Totally. Yes. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nellie. All right, open for questions if there are any. Oh, also, I want to mention this. Wait, hang on. Can you mention this? Yes. I was supposed to tee up a question, which is, if you're here and you're thinking, I would like to move from proximity to purpose to partnership, how could I get involved in something here? I would like to have Beth share.
Yeah, so it seems like making things into a game just makes it more interesting and more fun. So our team came up with something called Connection Bingo. And so for olders and youngers, and we learned early on that the olders didn't like to be called older. So so they're our CoGen allies. And so on this bingo, and I have several copies if anybody wants one, it has things like teach and be taught by a younger, invite or join a younger at the art museum, invite or join a younger for ice cream. It's just helping us on a game fashion to think outside of what we would usually do, kind of our ruts, right, of action. Invite or join a younger for a lecture or to the community lunch or for a porch chat. So if you'd like one, just as sort of all these are prompts to consider and to invite younger people to participate together. I have some.
Thank you.
Thank you for this, Eunice. This was wonderful. I'm wondering, because housing is a real issue across generations, are there specific programs that can pair younger people that need housing but may not be able to afford it, and older people that are in danger of losing their home because they can no longer afford it and may not have biological family to step in?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. Housing. Okay, at CoGenerate, we like to think about the problems that both generations have, but each thinks it's only their problem. And housing is one of them. Young people are really worried about being able to have affordable housing. Most feel they will not be able to buy a home. They think older adults have no problems when it comes to housing. When we talk to older adults, they are very worried about their ability to age in place. Nobody wants to leave the home that has been their home. So what has happened is that America has all these spare bedrooms that are caught up in older Americans' homes. And we have older Americans who are like, how will I age in place here? You have young people who are like, how will I find an affordable place to live? So there are a number of innovative startups and programs that are basically like an Airbnb for your empty bedroom. If you're willing to let a young person stay there at a discounted cost, they will help out a little bit around your house. They are not there to do the stuff that you'd need a professional to do. But frankly, most of us will not need that. Somebody to help with the grocery shopping or to get those groceries up the steps, somebody to change the light bulb, companionship. The one example that I love the most is at Drexel University. Some of the places that have become most unaffordable for young people to live is students who are at university. There was one university in California where students were living out of their cars, and the university opened up a parking lot so they could sleep in their cars safely. I was like, we have to do better than that. And that university sometimes creates creativity. I like Liv's thing, constraint, creates more innovation. They actually launched an intergenerational housing program with older adults near college who are willing to co-live with a young person. But the story at Drexel is the area around Drexel is gentrifying. And that means it's also really a problem for African Americans that have lived there for a long time and are at risk of losing their housing to speculative developers. And so a group of older and younger who were in a creative writing class called Writing Room decided that they should do something. They said, okay, we love creative writing together, telling each other stories, giving each other feedback, but what happens when one of the older people in your class is about to lose her house? It feels like the creative writing isn't enough for us to do. They had the belonging, they were extended family, they're like, not on our watch. And so the students and the older adults started to look at other solutions. They partnered with an African-American developer in Philadelphia. They are going to do an experiment with one city block where they're going to build these two-story apartment units where the older can live on the ground floor, a student at Drexel can live on the upper floor, discounted rent. They've started to pilot some of this intergenerational housing, and one of the young men who is a student at Drexel says it's a co-op program, so a lot of the students at any given time are doing an internship. And so the student population is even more transient than typically. So he said to be able to live in the house of an older adult was not his initial vision of college, but it actually turns out that that person is home all the time. He has a sense of home, and he's so grateful for the affordable housing that lets him be close to campus that every month that he pays rent, he brings his housemate a bouquet of flowers. He says it's such a small thing to say thank you. And so I think we need to get more creative. These are not highly scaled programs, but we need more smart people and people with capacity and capital to get more creative about housing. Thank you.
I'm wondering, when you talk to people about their interest in making intergenerational relationships, they ever speak to an experience similar to what I had. I had a fabulous, my grandfather lived with us. We went bike riding when I was 13 and he was in his 70s. We walked our dogs. My husband had quite the opposite experience, having his grandparents live with him. And I wonder, that certainly influenced his perspective about doing anything like that. As it happens, my parents moved to Florida. Yeah. We were New Yorkers, and his parents died. So I wonder if there's that kind of conversation. Also, I say that in the profession, certainly that I was in, it was inevitable that we tutored younger generation, and in my case, I became very close friends with some of those people, went to their, when they had their first babies, and went to the weddings of those babies, etc. But I wonder about your experience with that. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that question. I think sometimes when we talk about intergenerational work or intergenerational living, we can feel like there's kind of a Pollyanna experience of like, it's always easy. I would say the CoGen scholars experience this week is actually, it gets harder before it gets better because you're bringing people together across great difference. The family dynamic is very complicated. And as much as we love the olders or your perhaps adult children that may need to come home, it's not always going to go well, and it's not always the best solution. I also think, especially here in America, it's rare that our houses are architecturally designed to allow for the ideal amount of separation and togetherness. Singapore, which is a very small country, and so they can do some things just because they have the will to do it, actually had a project because of their aging population to build a set of apartment units that would have a sort of, you can imagine, kind of modular entry on one side, one on the other side, a door that could open, and at different times and life stages, you might live with your family, with a kind of like the in-law unit, but it's connected. Sometimes it would be wide open, you're all together. But you can also imagine as you got older, you might be like, I'll move into the smaller unit here, and my adult children can live here, but there's a door that closes and separate entrances. I think we need to get more creative on the architecture side too. But I'll say the most important thing is, you'll remember that at the start, I asked how many of you have a close friend who is outside of your family? Sometimes we found that the intergenerational dynamics within our families are the hardest to solve because there's so much baggage, and there's a lot of cultural norms that are really, that are difficult to shift. And that when you can actually do a collaborative project with somebody older or younger than yourself in another environment with somebody who's not family, you reduce the baggage and the narratives and you become friends. Those are better people to get advice from on how to fix the thing that's happening in your home. I can attest to the fact that as a younger person, there are things I can hear from my many older friends that I will not hear from my own internal family parents or elders, right? And the same is true in the opposite. And so do those things so that you can kind of triangulate back and then heal some of the things that are happening in the family. But it's complicated. I think we're over here, yes.
I think a lot of us are interested in the program that you're doing here at Chautauqua right now, but we really don't know a lot about it. Can you tell us about what's happening and what you've been doing this week? Yeah.
So I would advise anybody to come afterwards and talk to Beth because she runs the Community Compact program, which has many components to it. I came last year for a week. I'd never been to Chautauqua before. Ernie said, Eunice, you have to come because you just don't understand what Chautauqua is until you get here. And he was said, embed in all the things that are here and experience these things, and then give us some ideas on things we could try to bring generations together in a more collaborative way. Because the generations are here, as I said before, but not always co-creating, co-conspirators, kind of allies in doing things together. And we came up with a bunch of ideas, and there are all kinds of reasons why many of them are very hard to do, but I'm happy to talk about those separately. This week was about, like, where is the water flowing? Where can we do something without a lot of institutional infrastructure or structures getting in the way? And Beth runs a nonprofit that is not a Chautauqua program, so she has a lot of independence in how she runs it. But her playing field is Chautauqua, so there are 2 weeks a year, week 3 and week 5, where her scholars come here. They're community college honor students, and they have a program where they're learning how to develop social capital, how to network, build their sticky relationships with people who have lived long lives, had great careers. It's a wonderful opportunity to learn how to engage with across difference. But most of those relationships are a mentoring relationship, and they're also wonderful friendships that form. But we said, let's try and experiment with older and youngers coming together where the point is to put on something together. We'll do these pop-up experiments. And then really, those are just the background. What we're really doing is learning from all the little challenges that come up along the way. How do you get olders and youngers feeling like they're in it together? So it was just a pilot. There will be another version of it in week 5. So if any of you are here for longer, week 5, be on the lookout for these CoGen and summer scholars, and use Beth's bingo cards. And if they host a pop-up event like that, I encourage you to go and check it out.
Thank you for your talk. Sort of a exercise I always do is saying, what is the problem to be solved? And I think the problem to be solved is loneliness. It was thought that depression was fixed to 10% of the population from 1950 to COVID. Today, hasn't gone down since COVID, it's at 30%. And, you know, England has appointed a cabinet member in the government on loneliness.
Yeah.
The Surgeon General has said loneliness is a pandemic. And I think there are multiple solutions. I mean, the New York Times, I sort of became a self-help newspaper, but they said, you know, fire your psychiatrist and walk your dog. Because dog walkers never pass each other without talking. Or go spend time in the garden. But I think, do you see a movement of connecting, even on the happiness index? The United States was at 17th, we fell to 24th. It was like one of the biggest drops other than a place like Ukraine and happiness. And I think that it's not one size fits all, but there has to be a concerted effort. By the way, one treatment for loneliness is if you hang out on the porch of the women's club, you won't be lonely long. Somebody's going to go out and they're going to establish a conversation with you. There might be a cookie or a cup of coffee. So for that reason, I've been a lifelong member of the women's club for a long time.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I appreciate that comment because sometimes I think the biggest thing that intergenerational connection and collaboration can solve is our loneliness epidemic. I think we all can picture that people who are getting much older in life are at the greatest risk of social isolation. What some people don't know is that it's our youngest generations that are reporting the highest levels of loneliness. You can be surrounded by people and be lonely. And our young people are not isolated, but they are lonely. And they're lonely because, and they know, they're lonely because of their devices, they're lonely because the world feels chaotic and then they pull in instead of engaging out there. One of the beautiful things about intergenerational relationships specifically is it's very rare for an older and younger person who are engaging eye to eye to have a device in between them. If you are both amazing gamers, like that would be possible, but in general, those relationships are around other things. And the pop-up experiment that we did showed that the younger and the olders all loved art and music, engagement in culture. Those are the things that people love, and young people are actually craving to engage in that way. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest things that we can do, is just connect.
Thank you very much. I have an idea which may be pie in the sky, but it is intergenerational connections. For many years, I've been suggesting to the management here to consider putting up a multi-story, maybe 2 to 3 story, long dormitory-style building by Massey Avenue where there is a employee parking lot. So the ground floor is parking lot and they have 2 or 3 stories long dormitories. Then you partner with universities and colleges and have students come here during the summertime. They will pay very little rent and they will work here and partner with the community here. And hopefully over years they will become Chautauquans because they will see what it is. You cannot describe Chautauquas. You have to be here to understand and feel it. It all comes down to money. So if your organization or others which can pull in some funding, you can talk to the management and see if that is feasible. There could also be some stores built up. All kind of possibilities exist to make it revenue neutral, but you need the capital to get it started.
Thank you. I love, I said, in some ways you're suggesting the reverse of the university-based retirement communities, which would bring older adults onto college campuses, is what is the version of that for students who want to come or young people who want to come and work. I do think we have to think about how we use the pipeline. The workforce is going to be one of the most important places where older and younger people have to learn how to work together. 5-generation workforce, many of us have that's where young people are experiencing their greatest collaborations. And I often think places like summer jobs in high school, all of those internships are places where they can actually be practicing intergenerational collaboration. Jobs at Chautauqua is definitely one of those. So I don't have the money for that, but I think it's an interesting idea. So thank you everyone for coming. I'm happy to hang out, answer more questions.